Welcome back to Homa Studio's Intro to Gravit series, where we're working with vector art and we're using the Gravit online application, and we're just making an apple and pear using some compound paths. We're editing anchor points and we're throwing some gradients on there, and we just finished an apple, so we're going to make a pear that's going to look like this. This is our sample, so I'll show you how to do that. We'll go back to this one and I'll make a new page and I'll double click on the name. It's just called Pear. And I'm going to make my pear out of two circles, or two ellipses as they call them. We'll just make a little snowman to start. It doesn't have to be perfect. And I'll just make one, and then I'll hold down my Option key, or if you're on Windows, hold down your Alt key, and just make a second one, drag copy, and make a copy, and I'll make this bigger. We'll drag this so we have kind of like a snowman here with like two snowballs, and we'll join them together. We'll highlight both of them. Now, what you could do before we join these together is you can use your align tool, and we'll do align center just to make sure they're on top of each other. Now they are pretty good because I didn't see them move when I did that, but you can always align them that way so we can align center when you align them on their vertical point. And then I'm going to use a compound path operation and join these together using union. So I'll use union, and remember, it's not permanent yet because you'll still see the separate shapes. And if we want to edit anchor points, which we do because it doesn't look like a pear, we're going to use convert to path, and then we'll use our sub-select tool. And you might think, oh, I should move this around and smooth it out and do all kinds of stuff there. No, you don't have to. Actually, you could just delete this. Just use your delete key, and we'll delete these anchor points where they kind of met in the middle. And then I'll click on the anchor point here and just kind of drag the handle, bring it in a little bit. I'll drag this one down, and to make it a little more pear-shaped, I'll bring the bottom down a little bit. And I'll bring this in a little bit. And I'll stretch this up just a little bit so it doesn't look too artificial. That looks a little more pear-shaped. And right away we can give it a gradient. And I like to go back to my pointer tool to do that. And I'm going to go on my fill. And I'll just give it a green color to start. Now that's really kind of harsh lime green, so I'll kind of tone down the saturation right now. And then I can go to radial gradient, and I'll swap it because I want green on the outside, so I'll swap this, and I'll use kind of a highlight to start, and I could even use yellow as my highlight to start, and I'll do that, and I'll bring my highlight up here, and I could even make that white if I want. If I want to do what I did with the apple, I can make that white, and then I could go in here and make that yellow and kind of go, so it has a little bit of a highlight, then it has yellow, then it has green, and what I'll do at the end is just like if I look at this sample here, you could see I did a little red at the end. So we kind of went from white to gold color to greenish to red at the end. And I'll do that again. So when I go back to edit my gradient, I have to go in here and I'll add a color just by clicking on here at the end. And I'll use that kind of burgundy color. And maybe I'll just kind of desaturate it a little bit. Now it doesn't look good right now, so I'm going to stretch this out and make our gradient bigger, and I'll zoom out so I can see these ends here, and I'll stretch it out that way. And you could even try rotating it like maybe like that if you want it coming on that end. Now when you do that, I like to do this too, so we kind of maintain that L shape. And I'll just kind of do that a little bit. Now, if you're seeing lines between things, it could be because of the way the color is. It could be because they're too close together. So I'm going to move this a little bit, but I'm actually going to make it a little bit darker. So I'm going to move this down a little bit because it'll blend with the red a little bit better. So I'm going to move that down and get a little more natural green color, and even move away just a little bit because it'll make that a little smoother. And I'll bring my gold out here a little bit, and maybe I'll make it a little more golder. Make it a little duller. And even this can have a little yellow in it. I don't want a straight yellow, but I'll give it a little bit. And this I'll go a little golder so I can move this into the orange a little bit to get a little bit of that color. And if I move this over, I'll get a little more. Now be careful if you start getting those, lines in there. It may be because the colors are too different. That's why you might use a transition color if you're getting too many linear kind of looking things in here. And maybe this might need to be a little more in that area to kind of make it blend a little bit. So if the colors are too different, you're going to get lines, but that looks okay right now as kind of a pear kind of color here. Now, instead of making a stem again, I have a stem from the apple, and I'll just copy it, and I'll just use that. And I'll just make it a little bit smaller so it doesn't look like the same exact stem. And what I did on my other one was put a little shadow here. Now, what we can do, I'll zoom into this, is I'm just going to make an ellipse. And I'm going to put a gradient in the middle. So that means I'm going to go inside here and I'm going to use a radial gradient, and I'll swap it because I want the dark color in the middle, and I'll use kind of a greenish gold kind of color. I'll kind of go over here. I'm getting the hue down here first, and maybe I'll go over a little bit more and get kind of a darker color in there to kind of match the stem a little bit, but more of a brownish kind of color. And then even over here, I might go with kind of like a yellowish color and kind of mute it down. Now, you might say, well, that doesn't look very good, but what I'm going to do with this color on the end is take the opacity all the way down. So it kind of goes from a solid color to a transparent color, and sometimes matching the colors a little better makes it look a little more realistic. Now, this can be a little bit bigger, I think, and we'll put it right there where the stem is so it looks like it's coming out of there. If you need that to be a darker color, you could go in here and then maybe just darken that up a little bit to make it a little more prominent. That way you have a little area where the stem's kind of coming out there. So that looks pretty good, and I think that's all we really need with our pear right now. So if I go back to my apple, there I have my leaf. I don't have any shadow. I could put a leaf on my pear if I want, but I'm going to leave it like that. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a new page. I'll call it Apple Pear, and I'm going to copy my apple. Now before I copy my apple, I think what I'm going to do is highlight it and then group it. And here's the group symbol right there. Or you could go to modify group selection, but I'm just going to click on that symbol, so that'll make it a group. And you could even name your group and just call it Apple, which I like. You can do that. And then inside your Apple group, you can always go into the areas of the group. Keep in mind, when you want to go into the group, you just have to click on it and just kind of click on it again. And if you ever need to edit within a group, you don't have to do all that double clicking like you have to do in Illustrator. It's a lot easier to get into groups here, and you can see that we're inside the group. So that's my Apple group, and then I'm going to go to my Pear group. Well, actually what I'll do first is I'll copy this whole group and I'll paste it to my Apple Pear, and there it is. And I'll scale it down a little bit so it'll scale the whole shape. And then I'll go to my Pear and I'll do the same thing. I'll group my Pear, and I'll use the group selection, and I'll name my group Pear. Then I'll copy it and I'll paste it here, and I'll leave that in front so I see a little of the highlight of the apple, and I can also see my bite there, and I can even rotate this a little bit so I have my little composition there, and maybe it's picking up a little reflection from the red of the apple, but that's not bad. Let's look at our sample that we did. Yeah, it's very similar. I think I like the apple. Well, this is a little more golder. The other one's a little more greener, but that's not too bad right now. You could always tweak all this stuff. Just click on here, click on the actual shape, mess with the gradient if you want, but that's pretty good for now. And I'm going to close this up over here. Now keep in mind that we have 3 pages here, and if you exported this as a PDF, you would actually have a 3-page PDF. And if you wanted to open this in Illustrator or do something in Illustrator, you have to take away the gradients. It doesn't like gradients, and it'll come in more as raster artwork. So make sure you use solid colors if you're going to be doing any work in Gravit that you're going to bring into Illustrator, and you just have to export that as a PDF. If you go here and choose File, Export, PDF, now for Pro version you could get 300 dpi, but if you're using Vector it doesn't really matter. So I'm just going to use 150 dpi, and I'll just put this on my desktop for now just to look at it, and I'll just call it Apple Pear. I may have one there already. I'll just call it 2, and then if I go on my desktop and I open it up, there it is. Now on a Mac it'll open up in preview, but there you see I have a 3-page PDF, which is nice to be able to do that. And you could always delete pages in here, but that's our PDF. Keep in mind, if you need transparency behind it, I know I mentioned that in the first video, but if you ever need transparency, you can always take your page color and just turn down the alpha on the page color so things are transparent. Now, I don't know if in a PDF, how you're going to see that in a PDF in preview, but if you have to bring it in somewhere else, if you have to bring it in a PowerPoint or whatever, you do some artwork that you're going to put in somewhere else or in a movie, anything like that, you can turn down your page color to make sure that you have transparency. So I'll just put that back up because I'm not worried about that right now. And then remember, you should do file save. So I'm just going to click that and save that, the save icon. And always make sure that it syncs before you share it. Sometimes students in my class would share things before it would sync and it wouldn't be the most up-to-date version. So make sure you always save, make sure you always wait till it syncs and then share it. And then you could click on the share button and you can always copy and share the link, especially if you're using this for education, which we are. So that's the Pear part of this, and that's part 2 of our Apple Pear, and we're going to be doing more in our Intro to Gravit series. Thanks for watching.